Hello guys, in this fundamentals video I'll be talking about the two different kinds of solar panels. We have mono on the left side, that's monocrystalline, and then we have polycrystalline on the right side. That's the two basic kinds of panels. Mono, it's called mono because it's made out of a single crystal and then cut into wafers. That's a semiconductor, that's how the electricity is made. Polycrystalline is made out of many crystals and then made into a wafer. Poly is much cheaper to make, mono more expensive and also more efficient. So you can normally find much higher wattage on a mono panel compared to a poly panel. You see other differences like the shape and the color. Poly used to be mostly blue, but that has changed. You can now also find poly that's black, so I wouldn't think too much about the color, but and also the shape of these. Actually, you can now find mono that don't have these corners, but it's still useful because if you see these corners, like if you go around and look at older systems, if you see these cut corners, it's usually mono, and if it has a bluish color, it's definitely almost always poly. Mono panels are more efficient, as I said. They used to have a problem with heat, but not so much anymore, because mono is more efficient. The biggest producers and manufacturers, they are focusing on mono. So the technology has been developing more rapidly on the mono side compared to the poly. Efficiency is going further up, not so damaged by heat anymore. And also the quality of the panels that you find with mono is usually higher because they concentrate more on making a higher quality frame, making connectors that last longer, making sure the glass is less prone to breaking, stuff like that. Poly is usually the lower grade, the brands that are not tier 1. Tier 1 and 2, that's tiers that the solar industry has made for companies so that consumers can more easily identify the manufacturers that have a more solid backing, less prone to go out of existence, go bankrupt and stuff like that. Because in the past, if you look back on the solar industry, there were some mishaps in that regard. So that's how this tier grouping came into place. So it's definitely useful to, if you make an investment into solar energy, that's significant. It's very useful to only buy tier 1 panels. I have only sold tier 1 so far, and we also use tier 1 for our house. Definitely something to think about there, that you are less likely to have problems with guarantees and stuff on a tier 1 panel compared to a poly. Even though poly is cheaper, that doesn't mean that it necessarily is useless for all kinds of applications, even though it might also have less quality than the mono, because let's say in a smaller installation, that the most important thing is the cost. I would definitely go for poly for sure. And also the opposite is true. I would select mono if I was doing a bigger investment and it was going to be the main installation in my house, for example. I would always choose poly for sure because it's higher quality, less likely to have problems, less likely to have problems with guarantees, more efficient, take less space. Space is another factor that's very important to consider in these when you select the panels. If you have little roof space, always go for mono. If you have a lot, at least you have the option of selecting poly. Very important factor. So as you do the installation, obviously when you choose mono, you will save a little bit money on the installation process itself because you use less railing, less brackets, less cables compared to poly. So when you compare the panels, you have to compare prices like that too. It's not only the panels themselves that create the sum here. So that's quite important to think about. Just show you an example of a poly panel. These are our own panels. Very nice panels, and as you can see, even though they are poly, does not have any cut corners. So that's also why the poly panels tend to be more beautiful, because the poly panels they make more investments, the company, to develop the poly panels, so they have a higher quality also in terms of aesthetics, at least in my opinion. But you can get the poly panels that look decent too. Let's see here. So when you look on the more cheaper panels that you can get, for example on Lazada or on Global House, it's usually poly panels because they are the cheapest. However, many people tend to get fooled by this price because they just compare, like, okay, if I pay 3,400 for poly, then I pay 5,000 for mono, and then you pay 5,000 for mono. I'm going to save almost 2,000 baht. Well, actually you're not, because as I said, you're going to use a lot more cables and railings and brackets for this, and you're going to take up more roof space. And the panels are going to have a little bit lower quality on average, for sure. So many things to consider. So that's a little bit about basics of panel differences. Hope you have a nice weekend, guys. Take it easy.